Hi everyone, welcome to Tuesday's Casual Watch Talk Live. Should be a pretty fun show. I am joined by Patrick from Pocket Watch Time.
Hey everybody.
And as you can see, it's just the two of us. So we need, there was a lot of conflicted stuff on. The Wind Up Watch Fair is happening this weekend. So I know there's a lot of people traveling for there. So we definitely need lots of help in the comments section on this subject. We are going to cover, I put clickbaity ugly watches, but they're actually more unusual or weird watches that we quite like. So sort of guilty pleasures. But I had to put a clickbait title, otherwise nobody would have clicked on it. But let us know in the comment section as we go through ours if you've got any. We'd love to hear them. But Patrick, we might as well do a wristwatch check. Would you want to start it off?
Yeah, well, first of all, Sam is more politically correct than me. Some of mine are just ugly, and that's just the way they are. But they're ugly, but I love them. So, you know, you can't go wrong with that. And for anyone who is going to either Watch Time or Wind Up Watch, I'm heading out on, I guess I'm heading out on Friday. So if anybody is going to be around, hit me up on some email or some DM and let me know where you're going to be. I'd love to bump into some of you guys. But in terms of what I'm wearing today, I'm rocking the Zodiac Super Seawolf Meteorite. And I've got it on the brand new Zodiac orange dive strap, and I've loved the watch, and putting it on orange and putting it on a dive strap just makes it a bit more casual, and that's more my style. The included bracelet's really actually a wonderful, nice bracelet. It just it's just too formal for me. As I said, I just like having something that I can wear to work and wear around, and not worry that I'm going to knock into anything. So I just love it a lot.
Yeah, and I'm just trying to find. So Alvin at my work, he also bought this watch as well. So it's the first Zodiac that I've known somebody to, for people to wait for it to launch like you did, the Meteorite dial, and then somebody from work as well, purely coincidental. And he sent me some great pictures of the watch, which I ended up sending to Mike Pearson at Zodiac, and he was really cool to see it in the wild. So it's amazing because it is limited edition, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, there's only 182 of them, and
wow.
And Watch It's Brian from the Tea and Tickers show. He bought one. I haven't seen him post a picture of it yet, but so I mean, with all those people, there's 4 people out of 182 already. So that's pretty impressive. That as you said, it really kind of is getting the community interested.
Yeah, and Brian, that's Brian's Instagram, isn't it? Watch It's Brian or something. Yeah, check it out on Instagram, guys, because he's got a great watch collection. He's even got that left-hand drive Rolex, hasn't he?
Oh my God, he's got more watches than all of our panelists' toes and fingers combined. He's definitely a collector.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've got my green date just on, and I'll just do it full screen. I'm actually working on a review for this now, and it's going to be a review and a bit of story time. Like, why did I pick the date just? Why do I like it so much? Why did I go for this particular model? But I really like it, and the reason that you're seeing it in every show is because I pretty much sold all my other ones. There is a couple of watches that I've been stalking. They're not in this guilty pleasures one, but they're certainly, like, Seiko's coming out with a new speed timer that I think looks pretty cool, and there's a few others that I get that like honeymoon period, and then I sometimes get like the itch. I don't know if you get that, but get the little itch after a while.
We're watch guys. We all get the itch, so it's part of the guilty pleasures.
Exactly. Well, speaking of guilty pleasures, should we dive in now? So this is your one. This is your first one. So this is the Octo Fismo, but this is this looks a little bit different than the one we used to see in.
Well, see, and here's where my love and hate is. Objectively, if I look at the Octo Finissimo, whether it be this version or whether it be any real version, I just have to step back and just say it's kind of an ugly watch. I mean, all of those angles and all of those little things, I don't really think it's that pleasant to the eyes. But oddly enough, I really like it. And that's kind of where, I'm kind of struck with it. And one of my biggest gripes with the watch is that the dial to me is a little too plain, and I'm not a chronograph fan, so I don't want the chronograph. And so when they released this one that kind of in a weird way took away the plainness and added, stick markers and a circle for the running seconds. I actually really kind of like it, but I truly think if you were walking down the street, someone would clown you because it's an ugly watch. And I mean, who wants to have a dial that's got a children's drawing on it? I mean, it's a horribly weird concept, but it's actually probably my favorite Octo Finissimo. And as I said, it's ugly, but I love it.
I agree that I don't think I've seen this model before. There is something about this that I quite like, and I think it's to do with the way that they've even sketched Swiss made at the bottom. There's something quite clever about that, isn't there? So they've made so many versions of this watch, haven't they? That I think the latest one was that mirror dial.
Yeah, they have. They've made a lot of special editions, kind of in the Grand Seiko scheme of things, and a couple of them are nice. I think Pete and I were having an argument about it before, where some of them just they're more artistic, and no offense to some people's watch collecting styles. I mean, I don't want my wrist to be an art piece. I want it to be a timepiece first. I want it to be beautiful, but I want to be able to look at it and tell the time. And some of the new ones they've made have no hour markers. They're just beautiful, but not very functional. And as I said, that's my bias. I like function over beauty, but this one, as I said, I just kind of have the sweet spot for. And if I didn't have another couple watches in the chute of what I was going to get, this might be something I would try on and pursue, but probably not.
Yeah. Okay, so Jeremy's not impressed. Jeremy's not impressed with that pick. Okay, so next one is, I've tried to mix them up. So next one is one of mine, and this is, so I don't know if you know this, but they had this article on Hodinkee, and Pharrell Williams, the singer, has set up this new auction site called Jupiter, right? So it's an online auction site. And what he's done is he's actually started selling off 50 of his own items, and he's got some crazy stuff on there, like he's got a gold BlackBerry, but he's got several of these Bape G-Shocks, and this one has got a guide price of 17,500 to 27,500. And I don't know, I've always, it's made by Jacob. I think it's made by Jacob and Co. There's just something just so ostentatious, and I know that a few other people have got these, haven't they? Boxers and people like that. But I just think there's something sort of opulent about a G-Shock having diamonds on it. I don't know what you think of on that one.
Well, the question I have now, does this mean you like this watch, or is this just ugly and for ugly's sake?
No, I think I like it. I think there's something about it. I wouldn't want to own it, but I'm not sad that it exists. I just think there's something of having because it's not even, it's the base model of the DW 6900, which you probably get for like $50, I'm guessing. But then there's obviously an extra, $10,000 that's gone into making the gold case and all of the diamond inlays on it as well. And this is how rich he is. He hasn't even bothered to keep the battery kind of going in it.
Oh, that's funny. No, I've never seen this one, but I think Jacob and Co. and a lot of the promotions that Pharrell plays with are interesting. I know he makes a collaboration with Adidas, and they're some of the ugliest shoes you've ever seen, but they sell out the second they hit the market, and people love him. So I guess his name is a sellable coupon, and people are buying.
Well, exactly, and whilst we've got a bit of time, he's selling like a gold BlackBerry for $15,000. Again, probably doesn't work. And he's got several of these gold watches. But to be fair, he does have some real horological taste, because he's got these. He's got two concept APs, and then he's got this skeletonized. These aren't great pictures, actually, to be honest. You'd think if you were spending that much money, you'd have some decent pictures. But he's got the skeletonized with a sapphire dial AP there, which I think is a perpetual calendar, that one. Perpetual calendar. So he has got some more opulent watches.
Yeah, I don't think I could pull those off, but that one definitely hits the ugly and I'm not interested category for G-Shock.
I think Pete's got a great comment here. No one can make money look tacky better than Jacob & Co.
I second that. I don't think anyone can argue. I mean, it's sad though, because Jacob & Co. actually does, in some of their higher complication watches, make some really fantastic mechanical timepieces. Just why did they have to make them so ugly? And that's tough.
Yeah, the that Godfather watch that they do, the ones with the tiny the Bugatti ones and things like that, and the ones with the tiny music boxes and stuff in, really, really crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, next one is one of yours, and this is the Girard-Perregaux Sports Classique. So, did we talk about? I nearly bought it. Then let's buy it.
So yeah, this is the Girard-Perregaux Evo 3, and I believe this is is it an annual calendar? I somehow I thought this might be an annual calendar, but I might have to check up on that. It might just have some cool complications on it. But this is probably about 15 years old, and the white dial is the one that I think I like better, because I think the black dial kind of goes along with our, it's kind of ugly. There's just too many weird colors. Like, they've got the moon disc that I guess has blue. It's got a red, seconds hand around the moon disc, and then it's got the silver and just some other odd colors. It just seems too out there. But the white one, at least it kind of settles it down a bit. But in my head, I almost pushed the button. I think Federico was selling one, and he had a pretty good price for it. And I was just like, ooh, do I? And I kind of just thought about it for a week, and somewhere in that week, someone bought it. And I said, okay, karma, someone wanted it more than I did. But I think it's pretty neat that it's got a double date. So it's got a big date. It's got the moon phase. It's got a power reserve. I guess it doesn't have an annual calendar. I guess that's enough complications for one GP. But I just think it's a really interesting watch. Kind of hit with a little bit of the ugly stick, but I still kind of like it.
Yeah, I don't mind the way it looks, actually. It's very 90s, isn't it? It seems like it's one of those watches that goes in fashion and everybody wants it, and then it immediately goes out of fashion. I always think about the root beer Rolex in that context, that there's a time when the root beer Rolex looks amazing, but then I think other times it probably as taste shift. I think the same that we're seeing with two-tone gold and steel watches at the moment. They're having a real resurgence, aren't they? Whereas I think at one time they weren't as desirable as perhaps they are now. Certainly coming out of the 80s, I think they were kind of tailing off. But no, I actually don't mind that. Well, next pick for... Oh, I better get rid of that so I don't buy one. Next pick for me is the G-Shock Frogman. And this comes under the weird and possibly ugly one, but the story behind it is what sells it. So this is a frog professor that refound basically a rainbow toad that they thought was extinct, or it hadn't been seen, I think, for like 30 years or something. And he actually rediscovered it. Look, a species that thought to have been extinct from 1924. And once he discovered it, G-Shock went as far as to make a limited edition version of the Frogman for the guy who is the Frogman or the Frog Professor. And the story, I think, is quite cool, even though I think that even though they're matching kind of the rainbow toad look, I don't think this is the pinnacle in design of the Frogman. I just think that the story is pretty cool around it. And I think they sold out of them. I'm sure they were, I'm sure. There you go. There's a better picture of it. So you've got copper colors, yellow, sort of baby blue there, a green seconds hand.
Mm-hmm.
I don't know what you think of that one.
Well, I'm so glad you told the story, because kind of like you were saying with the story, just making it so unique and special. I mean, obviously, just looking at the watch by itself, oh my God, it looks like someone just threw it up. I mean, it's hideous, but that story is actually pretty fantastic. So I never heard that before. I've never seen this watch, but that's really cool that, this frog guy, herpetologist, whatever he wants to call himself, found this frog, and they made a frogman out of it. I think that's actually pretty amazing. So it's a great story.
Yeah, it really is. And he said herpetologist, but I'm sure he's got like a really cool name. I won't go into it if I can't find it, but I think there's like a special name for the research of toads. I'll leave a link in the description down below if anybody wants to put into it. But yeah, it was it was quite cool. And I remember when this came out, we featured it on the podcast because I thought it was cool then, and I still think it's pretty cool.
Yeah, Sam in the comments just said that it looks like watchmaking on acid, and I can't agree more.
Well, we had the Richard Mille, didn't we, the other day with the
God, yes.
So next up here, this is one of yours, and this is Girard-Perregaux, and this is this is a Bamford one.
Yep. So as you can see, GP is on my love it and not love it list, and this one is really tempting to me because I like limited editions. I think limited editions just mean that you can walk down the street and no one's going to see your watch, and I think that's just kind of cool. But this one, it's tough because it's white ceramic, and I just don't know if I could pull off a white watch. I mean, this would shine like a white dinner plate on your wrist. And I just don't know if that would be good looking or if it would be truly the ugliest watch that I could ever own. But I love its unique character. And, I don't really necessarily care that it's the Bamford limited edition, but Bamford made it, and hey, kudos to them. I like it. The disadvantages, they used the 38 versus the 41, which for most people would make that a buzzkill because they kind of call that the mid-size / lady size. But for a guy with a 6.5-inch wrist, it probably means it would fit wonderful. So my pet peeve about this one is just, could I get it for the right price? And if I could find one for pretty much, what I would think would be a fair price for it, I would snatch it in a heartbeat just because, as I said, I just think it's so unique.
Yeah, I would be interested to see what a ceramic bracelet is like. I would argue that one of the best watches that I ever reviewed and saw in person is the Grey Side of the Moon, the Omega. I know you don't like the Speedmaster, but the Omega Speedmaster.
Actually, it's my favorite one, though. That's my favorite. Yeah,
stunning execution of it, and the case and the feel of that ceramic. But this almost looks very plastic, doesn't it? It looks like it could be plastic. And I don't know how. Have you ever felt a watch that had a ceramic bracelet?
I think I think my old AD used to have Bulgari, and I think I tried on the Octo Finissimo, but I think one of them was a ceramic. It's hard to say because that watch is so tiny and so small anyway that I remember it being feather light. I just don't remember if it was feather light because it was so small or if it was feather light because it was ceramic, or both. But yes, definitely, I completely agree. It probably feels like a plastic toy. And, as I said, there's a lot of negatives for this watch, but I just think a virtually indestructible, scratch-proof, high horology-ish movement, limited edition. As I said, it's pushing all the buttons that make me say, ooh, I like it. But at the same time, I can recognize probably 95% of people out there would say, why the heck did you ever buy that? And I don't blame them.
Yeah, I mean, exactly. I was trying to find, there was a ceramic watch that, here we go. I was looking at a ceramic watch as well, which I haven't included in this list, but I do quite like the look of it. I think it was a Japan only, but it's the Honda, I believe it's ceramic case, but it's the Honda Astron, and it's got this white crazy kind of white ceramic case to it, and it was limited edition for the Honda Formula E cars. But yeah, I think they're a little bit rich for my taste at $2,000. But I think that this is but I was worried the same. Like, could I pull off a white cased watch? But
well, that one I think is a lot easier to pull off because it said it's kind of like a white accent. As I said, the other kind of looks like just a dinner plate, and I said that kind of scares me a little bit. But no, I think that's a really cool watch.
Yeah. So next on my list, and this is a pretty ugly watch, but I remembered being besotted with this when it came out. Have you ever seen this? The first GPS watch. It's it's a Pro Trek watch, and Casio released it, and it was the first. I believe it was the first watch to have GPS in it, and it came with like this whole charging apparatus that you had to clip in. But there's just something about. I've got a real affection, and you'll see, I think there's another Casio on this line, but I've got a real affection for those 80s and 90s Casios where each watch, they were just coming out with crazy stuff. Like they had, the one that had, I think it might even be on here, but their thermometer watch with like a laser thermometer on it. They had like sports watches for checking your pulse. And it was just like a crazy time where as innovation moved and technology started getting smaller and shrinking down, that Casio at that time were the first to try and put it into a watch. And I feel like this watch is also a symbol that Casio are really, I feel, have failed quite a bit at smartwatches. They released a Pro Trek smartwatch, but it never really went anywhere. And these other companies, Apple and so on, are kind of running away with it. But I just think that this is like a crazy watch. There is even one I think I saw. There's one on eBay that I saw. There's one guy with a wrist shot of it, and it is just as ridiculously big as you would think it was. But,
that's kind of the thing that I'm trying to figure out. How tall is it? Because it looks like there's almost like a battery pack cylinder at the top of it, and I mean it looks like it's as thick as a brick.
Yeah, let's I think I might have clicked off it, but let's look on let me just see if.
But I mean the face of the dial.
Here we go.
When I'm looking down at it, it doesn't look that bad. But obviously it's big and chunky. But okay, that one looks a little more streamlined. But
yeah, this was like a secondary version. But yeah, I mean it is absolutely huge. It came with this. You can sort of see it there. It has this charging dock with it. But yeah, it was monstrous. I mean, this guy's selling one for 1,350, but I'd looked at them ages ago, when I was going through a bit of a vintage Casio phase, and you could pick them up for a couple of $100. But obviously now people are realizing that they're quite rare and quite a important piece of history. And I can't imagine that they sold that many of them. Maybe they did, but I can't imagine that they sold many at the time, because I think at that time people were using those handheld GPSs, weren't they? And having it in a watch probably wasn't, even an advantage at that time.
Yeah, no, that's an interesting watch I've never seen before. But yeah, that's pretty neat that, back then, gosh, makes me feel so old, but 23 years ago that you could have a GPS on your wrist. That's pretty impressive, actually.
Yeah, absolutely. So, okay. Then next up we had, where have I gone? I've gone here. The Frog. We've done that. We did the Casio. This one is one of yours.
Oh yes, I am a huge fan of Constantin Chaikin, just because I think it's so cool making a watch kind of out of nowhere. I mean, I'm gonna get flack with this, but he's kind of what I consider the newest edition of Frank Muller, the father of complications. So like every watch that Constantin Chaikin makes is oddly complex. These are actually his least complex of anything. But if you go on his website, he has just the most magical imagination, and he puts them into watches. And I just think he makes awesome creations. This watch, though, as I said, one of his more simple watches, these face watches, the Joker being the most famous, I really like this one, the Dracula, because he added a new complication. So obviously it's got a regulator hours and minutes. Those are the eyeballs. It's got a moon phase, which is the tongue. But but an added complication for this one, during night the fangs come out, and so I just think that's so fun. And I think they want like $18,000 for this watch, so that's way more fun than I would ever have for that watch. But I really just appreciate it for just being a really cool watch. And once again, you'd probably get teased walking down the mall aisle wearing it, because it looks like it cost about $3, but it's actually a really complicated piece of horology. And as I said, I'm a fan.
Yeah, there's a couple of really interesting things about this watch as you look more into it, aren't you? I think it's got Dracula. Is it Dracula written round the bezel? And there's 2 crowns. I'm not sure what the other one is, but obviously it balances to make it look like ears. And I think the most amusing thing is the strap, where they've sewn the little bow tie on there, and then sort of the lapels of the jacket right onto the leather strap there. I think that's quite a fun design, isn't it? He's obviously having a lot of fun with and people must be buying them, because he also did, I think his most famous one was that Joker one, wasn't it? Where he did one similar to this, but it was the Joker.
Yeah, Damien from the Watch Guys, he has a huge collection of watches, and he's a big fan of Constantin Chaikin. He's got like 4 or 5 of them, and shows a couple episodes there. But he's got a great channel, and pretty much has watches that most of us will never see and or afford. But he's got some of these. I don't think he's got the Dracula, but they're real fun watches. And as you said, he always does that design where he builds in an element into the strap, and just really makes them fun.
Yeah, absolutely. Next up on my list, this is actually quite a historic watch, and I had a book that was 50 watches that changed the world, and this was on it, and it's by a French company called LIP. LIP, and they make some really cool affordable watches, but this Mach or Mach 2000 is probably one of their most iconic designs, and it's got a lot going on. For me, it looks a bit like a Braun watch. It's got that Bauhaus kind of look to it, and then these sort of how you activate the chronograph here looks a bit like that design style Memphis, that kind of 90s, 80s, 90s, almost like the opening title sequence to Saved by the Bell, that kind of over the top. But it's really cool, and they still sell this today. I think they must have been selling it for, I guess it's at least 25, 30 years old, this watch. But they do a mechanical. This one is a quartz watch, so very affordable. And like I said, there's a book called 50 Watches That Changed the World, and this one is in it, and I think it deserves its place. But LIP in general, they just make really affordable watches. I've never actually owned one, but they kind of make cheeky homages to watches, but also have their own style. They do a diver, which is quite kind of iconic as well, but that's historically they're best known for that Mach watch. So there you go. So they've got like a sort of a compressor style watch with the 2 crowns there, and usually very affordable prices. It's a French brand, but they've been going for a long time.
Yeah, Man Cave Leather just said that it reminded him of the Seiko Ripley, and I was kind of thinking the same thing.
Yes.
It's got a bit of that shape, and then it's got a little bit of an Alan Silverstein color scheme to it. So it was because how old is this watch?
I think it's got to be at least 20 years old.
Okay.
But I'll let me see if I can actually, let me just remove from here. Let's see if we can find it on the internet.
Because that definitely it's an interesting watch. I've never heard of it. And the company you said was LIP, LIP.
Yeah, LIP. Yeah. So I'm just looking at an article here saying it. Well, I'll put it in the thing. It actually says that the watch. The company started in 1973, and there was this originally was a mechanical version. So they're showing the mechanical version here as well, which obviously is a little bit more expensive.
Yeah, well, I mean, it's a fun watch, and I like the strap. I mean, it looks like it was well thought out.
Yeah, absolutely. So next one on the list is I think it's another one of mine, and this is a guilty pleasure. I actually owned this watch, but it's the Invicta Pro Diver, and it's the Mickey Mouse one. The one that I had, the Mickey Mouse was more off to the side. I can't find that they make that one anymore. But I think that even though this is like a cheeky Submariner homage, but I just like the fact that you can get them with multiple cartoon characters on them. They do one with Popeye and Garfield and a few others, but there's something about this. I like seeing Mickey on the dial there. And I think the Invicta Pro Diver, if somebody's just starting out in watch collecting, I mean, this is expensive for a Pro Diver. You can usually get the mechanical ones for $70, but they use the NH35A movement. They're rock solid. You can customize them. Funnily enough, the bezel on the Invicta Pro Diver is exactly the same size as a pre-maxi case Submariner, so you can actually buy Submariner inserts and insert them into the bezel. And I actually did that on a video a long time ago. But yeah, it always makes me smile, this watch, seeing Mickey Mouse on the dial.
Yeah, I said I'm going to say I'm not a fan of putting too many animated critters on dials. I kind of put that into the gimmick category, but I know everyone's got their own tastes. Speaking of Bamford, he just made a Frank Muller with Popeye on it, and I saw that and I was like, Popeye, interesting.
Well, there's actually a very famous. I don't know if you've ever saw this. It's got some on the fly here, but I don't know if you've ever seen this. This is quite an iconic watch. They've just re-released it actually, but it's Gerald Genter actually made a Mickey Mouse watch. So here this was it, and obviously the hands were pointing at the time, and then you've got the minutes over that side. But this is an extremely iconic Genter design, the Mickey Mouse watch on here.
Yeah, so I'll give that one a little bit of a pass because it throws in the retrograde complication. So at least in terms of some horology points, I can be a little nicer to that one.
Well, I've got Mickey Mouse somewhere in the back there, and he pays my wife's wages as well. But
absolutely, we got to be nice to the duck and the mouse.
In the mouse. Okay, so next up, I'll move one of yours. So we'll do one of yours next. This is the Panerai, and it's a tourbillon pocket watch, is it?
Oh gosh, I mean, I had to throw at least one pocket watch in there, being the pocket watch guy in the club, but this is by far probably the craziest pocket watch I've ever seen. And combination, I love it because they made it, and combination, oh my God, it looks like some ugly creation that fell out of Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome. It's a ceramic cased pocket watch with a tourbillon. And so, if you couldn't have enough going on, they made a scratch-proof ceramic pocket watch, which I think is pretty cool. But, they threw a tourbillon in there, which, I mean, I guess that's what the complication was built for, was a pocket watch. So that's pretty cool. But then they put it in this just ginormous skeletonized monstrosity. And as I said, I love it. I hate it. But good news is it's 75, 80 grand. So I will never buy it, and I will just look at it from afar.
Yeah, it's one of these watches where you were thinking, who's the audience for this when they originally made it? Like when they were in those concept meetings, was it purely just a kind of a concept piece that they were making for a watch show, or it was actually a full production one?
I mean, it was definitely full production, and I think it's limited, but I don't know what the limited edition number is. So, back then, particularly in the early 2000s, Panerai definitely dropped even more limited editions than they do now. And so I'm sure there's probably only 100, 200, 300 of them out there. Do they sell? I mean, at that price point, oof, that's a
184.
Yeah, that is a steep price. I don't know who is willing to pay it, but I would love to see one in the flesh, someday. But it's one of those watches that said it caught my eye. I appreciate it, but it's kind of a little off-putting at the same time.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. Well, next up, I've got one that is a bit out there, and this is the Hublot Las Vegas effervescence. And the reason that I've picked this is because if you're in when you're in Vegas, there is I'm sure if anybody's been to Vegas, there is something very intoxicating about being there, like the opulence of it, the opulence of the gambling halls, the different hotels and stuff like that. And Hublot, I think, do an excellent job of having a store there and having watches that are only available in that Vegas location. And this is one of those. And you just think, this is purely for somebody who's won like a lot of money, haven't they? They're just gambling and they've won a load of money. And Hublot's like, oh, do you want a limited edition Vegas watch? I think it comes with Hublot poker chips, which I'm sure you can't spend anywhere. But it's just kind of it seems like it's it's got Vegas on the back. It just seems like this is a watch that exists for people that are quite drunk and they've won a lot of money in Vegas, and they just walk into Hublot, or they walk into a watch shop like, what can I buy with my winnings? And they're like, oh, what about this Hublot limited edition? And you always see it in the window, and it comes in like a proper what looks like a poker box with the chips down the side and the watch in the middle. So I've got quite a bit of respect for the fact that they've made this watch rather than a particular affinity or something that I would save up to buy. But just the fact that it exists, I think I've got to give it some props.
Yeah, I mean, the sad thing for me is the watch itself is actually really pretty. I mean, I like the black DLC with the gold accents. I think that part's really nice. And the Classic Fusion, which I think is probably their most mainstream watch that I could get away with. I don't think the watch is too bad. Putting the 7 there, okay, that might be a little tacky. And then of course that case back. Oh, don't do the Grand Seiko thing and cover your case back with big old dumb internal stickers. That's never a good thing. I mean, even if it's an off-the-shelf movement, just stickers on the back of a case back, thank you, Grand Seiko, for finally listening to your fans and removing that, because good 2-3 years they put that on every watch, and it was just a nightmare.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, we've got one from the panel coming in here, and this is Pete from Not So Obvious Watches that sent this in, and this is the Frank Muller Vanguard in crypto. And I think he's got this as a guilty pleasure, but I think also it's obviously, again, you've got to give this watch props because it's clearly made for people that had made a lot of money in Bitcoin, because it's got its own QR code, which just briefly reading it, I'm going to make the assumption that goes to like a hard wallet or some kind of encrypted wallet where you can put your Bitcoin in, and then this unlocks that wallet. But yeah, it's another one of those, probably not that dissimilar than the Hublot watch, which is made for people who've obviously made a lot of money in crypto, and you got a little Bitcoin there and stuff like that. I don't know. What do you think of this, Patrick?
Wow, I've never seen that one. I mean, the Vanguard, I've actually always kind of liked the case shape, and I don't know if this was fake, but I saw one on Chrono 24 years ago, and it was a Frank Muller tantalum version. I've Googled it 1,000 times, and I've never been able to find a picture of it anywhere. So I don't know if I said this was fake, if it was wrong, if it was titanium, they called it that. But the one thing about the Vanguard that I've never liked was usually on the corners they have like a map setting, so it'll say like northeast, southwest, and I have no idea why it says that, and really just don't want that on my watch. So I have to give this one credit. They don't have that on there. And for that reason, I like it a little bit, but yeah, no, that's just putting a Bitcoin symbol or a QR code just like that Bulgari super thin. I mean, that's just tacky. It's not good.
Yeah, it looks like actually they've got a lot more going on. So they've got, it looks like you get an NFT with it, and then you've got 10 different 3D wearables in Decentraland, which is like a metaverse project. And then you've got 5 different Frank Muller Apple Watch faces that come with it as well. So they're kind of going all in on this physical stroke digital kind of thing.
Yeah. Well, I mean, it sounds like they're trying to make a bit of a resurgence, because with their Bamford collaboration and obviously, kind of jumping on the hype of cryptocurrency, hey, that's good for the brand.
Oh, yeah. So Ray's not happy with that. It says having a
No.
QR code on the face is hideous.
100% agree.
Yeah, awesome. Well, next up, I think I already did that one. Next up, this one is a crazy one, and I had to actually ask. I remembered this watch, but I actually had to ask Steve in our chat group what it was. But this is a Sauno, they're called, but they created these. This is after this one's called the Jackie X, who is a famous race car driver. But they created these just crazy chronographs, and this one isn't even the craziest one. I was actually looking on eBay, but they used to do some all just sort of crazy colors and stuff like that. But I think they were quite cheaply made, but they seem to be having a bit of a resurgence. Oh, here's another example of a Sauno. But they, for some reason, I think they might even still make them as well. But just a real crazy chronographs. I think they were cheaply made at one time. Maybe they've improved them, but it just reminds me of like the 70s and when watchmaking and they were adding a lot of complications to watches about racing that perhaps maybe weren't that useful in racing. But there's just something about these that just brings back that romance of race car drivers and the old kind of MotoGPs and all of that.
Yeah, it's an interesting cape shape. What I'm really kind of wondering is, I wonder what movement they use, because you see how they put it in a bullhead configuration, but
yeah,
it has, if you were to put it, horizontally, the 2 chronograph windows would kind of be in a pattern that I don't think I've ever seen in a movement before, because you have one at 9:03 and then you've got a date at 9 and 6 and a date at 3. That's an interesting movement that I don't think I'm familiar with.
Yeah, it says automatic. Yeah, this is automatic movement with hand winding function, but it's got the date on there for some reason. December, April, August.
So
yeah, this is obviously a new one, isn't it? So they must still be going. This looks brand new. It says new old stock, but I mean that looks. I might need to look more into it, but yeah, this was the original one was this Jackie X one, and then Steve and I talked about it on a show once, and it kind of, as soon as I remembered like ugly cool watches, it was the first one that kind of came to mind there.
So, yeah, well, I like that case shape where they sort of have at the 12 o'clock, they sort of have a fatter part of the case, so that I guess if you really are using it, that it sticks up, and I think that's pretty neat. There's a really expensive Seiko, which I didn't know existed until I saw it on an auction, that I guess has that case shape, and I can't even remember its name, but I mean, it went for like 20 grand. I was like, oh my God, what was that?
Well, there is actually a if you're really into Seiko, they did make one, and I think they made a version for the actual for an astronaut, but then they made like a commercial version. I'm forgetting the story now, but it's in a bullhead configuration. Oh, here it is, and it's actually one of the cheapest ways. I believe it's got a spring drive in it. I think this is the one. Or there was something similar where they put a spring drive movement into one of these, and this one isn't it? This is the 6R64, but there's one of these that has like a spring drive. It's like one of the cheapest ways to get a Seiko spring drive watch.
Yeah, but yeah, as I said, it has that fatter 12, so yeah, that's pretty interesting. I wonder what that would feel like on the wrist. I feel like I would accidentally be knocking that all over the place because it's just sticking up like a giant hump, but definitely convenient for a bullhead, because I can only imagine how hard it would be to mess with that stem otherwise.
Yeah, and there's that other brand, isn't there, where it has the top crown, but then that integrates into the strap. Like the strap has an extra piece on it to protect the crown. Let's Let me just block some of these. We're getting a lot of trolling comments for some reason. This isn't me with the Tinder comments in there. So next up here is, let me just, we just did that one, so I'll get rid of that one. I found this other Jackie X one, which said it was Hoya, but I don't know much about it, so I'll kind of go over there. This next one is, for me, is the Timex Beep Wear. Now, what this is it was a watch, and they made several versions of this. Also, Seiko made versions of this, and very famously, Swatch made versions as well. And they are pager watches. I don't know if have you ever seen these, Patrick, where it's a watch, but it's also was a pager as well.
I've never seen it, but man, the high school me wishes that I knew it existed back then.
Well, yeah, I mean, Swatch very famously had one, and I actually had one of those Swatches, and unfortunately, it disintegrated over time. But the Swatch was it was an analog dial, and the antenna for the pager was actually wrapped round the case, so it looked like the watch was almost in prison. But I got so obsessed with these watches, and I think I might still be the only one, but I actually made a video on this. So this is me right back when I first started out in 2017. This is me with the Swatch Beepwear, and I had one for a little bit as well. I just thought it was so cool. I actually managed to get one that was fully boxed, new old stock. I've long since sold it, and of course the service by Motorola that powered these is long gone.
Yeah, that was the next question I was going to ask, is how do you even get it to work? But so you can't use it anymore. There's no such thing.
No, I think they switched off the actual service that powers this. They certainly did with the Swatch watches, and I'm almost positive they did with this, because they came with obviously a phone number as well. But this was one of the Timex data links as well, which would allow you to upload data through. I've talked about this before, but if you had a CRT computer that had the old CRT screens, there's like a barcode that would flash on the screen, and that's how the data would get onto the watch. And they actually, the data links, there was a version of it that NASA authorized, and they did that one in conjunction with Microsoft. But yeah, again, I think a lot of my sort of guilty pleasures are going back to sort of the heyday of vintage watches, where they the heyday of digital watches, when every watch that came out was like a new innovation. Same with computers, I think at one time, weren't they? Like, if you upgraded your computer, you got like a significant upgrade to it, rather than nowadays where you kind of buy one if your old one dies. The specs are very comparable, unless you're doing video editing or something.
Yeah, no, that's a really neat concept. I've never even heard of it, that you could have a pager on your wrist. I mean, the crazy thing is it's smaller than an actual pager, because pagers were pretty huge. So,
well, yeah, let's look for the Swatch. Here we go. So the Swatch arguably actually made a more aesthetically pleasing watch. So here you go. So there you go. That's what I was talking about with the aerial, that the antenna that went across the dial, and then this LCD screen was basically where the pager messages would come. But the big problem with them is that if you see here, these two dots, you actually had a tool that you depressed those in, and you pulled this strap out, and the strap pulled out with the battery, because it would obviously go through batteries like nobody's business, and it used those CR202, the big button batteries. They're the 2325s or whatever. So this would break straight away, and that's what happened to mine. The strap pulled off, and because it's all, it's a Swatch, it's all plastic. Yeah. Mine disintegrated. But you can see on the back it had the phone number and stuff for the actual watch, so it came with its own its phone number page. Yeah, these were these were quite interesting at the time. Yeah, you can see a few on eBay actually, which is pretty cool. Yeah, so there you go. Next one is another one of mine, and this definitely is a guilty pleasure. And I wish that I was able to have got one of these when they launched them, because there's just something I really like about this. And this is the Kith limited edition G-Shock, the DW 6900. And this was Casio are now making rose gold watches or rose gold look watches, but they didn't at this time. And this is a metal watch. Kith is a brand a bit like Supreme, where they do drops of things. And they dropped this watch. They've done a couple of G-Shocks, but they dropped this watch and it sold out immediately. And we're on Hype Beast here. I don't know how much they're going for now, but I think they're in the at least the $1,000 to $1,500 mark. But they went all in on this. They actually, I'll see if it's got any more pictures of it. Yeah, if you look at it, it just looks awesome. There's just something about this that I really love, and they had their own buckle on it, a custom box, and all of this, which it wasn't just a limited edition like the Bamford where they changed the colors. They actually went and had this custom made case, because this is all metal along with the button and this the kind of reholt there as well. I just really like the look of it. I think there's something really cool about it.
Well, I think me and the everybody on board is going to learn a new thing. I think you've got a definite addiction to G-Shocks with gold faces.
Yes, yeah. But the thing is as well is that I'm also this is why it's a guilty pleasure of mine, because I really like the look of them, but I never am brave enough to actually buy one, because they do make a gold one, and they also make a rose gold version of the 5600, which I also really like, but I do worry like whether I could pull it off or not, so I never really just go that step further. Yeah, so I'm just reading some of the comments here. Pages, oh yeah, so yeah, Pete's just saying that pages are still a big thing in the medical and security industry. Yeah, you're right. But back then when they made these watches, it was when pages were kind of all the rage. Okay, so next up I had was, actually, this is one of yours, Patrick. This is the Cartier Las Vegas roulette dial.
So I don't know where to begin with this watch, because I really like it, but at the same time, objectively, I can look at it and go, oh my God, it is an ugly, ugly watch, but I still like it. And I really just can't get a grasp on it. I mean, Cartier is sort of getting a bit of a hype train in terms of people liking them when, for the last decade, no one's cared. I really don't like the Santos. Like, it does really nothing for me. My wife has the tank, but and I bought a strap for it, and I'm gonna pretty much make probably a parody video of me trying it on and just seeing what it looks like on a guy, because even though it's the size large, it's so tiny. And the Roadster is a discontinued model, but it's kind of their most, for lack of a better word, masculine watch of theirs. It just has a look that I don't think very many people would like, and particularly probably not ladies, because it looks almost like a rhino horn. And for that reason, I think it's kind of ugly. But at the same time, I think that integrated bullseye date, which, people hate on Rolex, and this one's even uglier, I just think is really cool. And then this weird variety that's got the roulette with the red on there. Once again, I just think it gives it a little personality. And, you can actually pick these up for not very much money, because they're old, discontinued, and relatively not super popular. So I just think it's kind of a fun watch, and I'm looking for one at a good price. And if I find one, I might snatch it up.
Yeah, there's a couple of crazy things going on here, isn't there? It's got the, it flips between the minutes and the hours. So you've got 55.5, and then you don't often usually see like 12, 3, 6, and 9 highlighted, don't you? But I don't think you often see 10, 2, 4, and 8 on a dial as being highlighted, unless all of the numbers are there. You don't usually see those as being called out in particular. And the other thing, this bracelet's kind of crazy, isn't it? The links are massive, but they're also curved.
Yeah, no, that is kind of neat. Tim Masso had a version of it, and his must have been like near the end of production, because they actually had a quick release bracelet on there, which I was like, whoa, I didn't even know they made that. but that was the first time that I had noticed that the bracelet links were actually curved, and I was like, man, that must be the most comfortable bracelet on the planet. So I mean, I've never tried one on. I'd love to, but you're right. The curved bracelet, I you just don't see that. So that's really kind of neat.
Yeah, it kind of reminds me of those. I think this was a '60s thing, wasn't it, where they had those rally straps, but they were actually the bracelet was all one piece either side. I think there was one. I'm sure there was one in Shaft, the original film, where he wore a watch and it had that metal kind of bracelet almost that looked like a bangle, but it was the watch strap. I forget what they call it, but yeah, yeah. This is definitely not my take. This isn't. This is the opposite of a watch that I would go for. And I agree with you. I'm not a huge fan of the Santos either, although obviously it's an iconic watch. Although I think the Cartier Tank, arguably is one of the most iconic women's watches, isn't it? But yeah, I can see. I feel like I have seen one of these. I feel like I saw one in Vegas in pre-owned in the Buccara one. Tenno, is it? The one that's owned by Buccara. But yeah. Well, I think that's certainly the end of my picks. Is there anyone? Just seeing if anybody's. Oh yeah, somebody's saying the Giugiaro chronograph is a guilty pleasure. Oh yeah, so somebody else is saying he's courageously battling a G-Shock addiction. I am as well. If that NASA G-Shock comes back in style, it comes back in stock, I might. Oh yeah, so sort of Roar of the Tiger saying Tissot had those steel bracelets. Well, considering we've got like a minute, let me see if I can find what I was talking about. The watch that was in Shaft.
I'm trying to think if I even know what that watch is. I know I've seen the movie probably a dozen times. I don't think I've seen it in a decade, so I don't even know watch.
Well, it's his watch, and it's more about I can't remember what the actual watch was itself, but the it was the strap that's more iconic, and it was a style where it was all, here we go. So let me just see if we can pull it up. Somebody's put a picture on Reddit here. So if you see it curves right round the strap. You see, it's like one piece of metal.
Okay.
I don't know if you can. There we go. We can zoom in a little bit. It's like one piece of metal.
Yeah, because it's a huge link. So to make up for it, I guess they put a curve in there. Yeah, that's very interesting.
Yeah, it's one piece either side, and then it does have like little micro adjustments. You sometimes find them in. You sometimes find them on eBay, and then there's also, I know Dave at Detroit Mint collects those ones that I believe they were made on Indian reservations that are more like a bangle that has that was also a watch strap as well.
Well, James Duffy's mentioned it twice, and I don't know what it looks like. What's the Zenith Chronomaster Revival?
Okay. I was going to put a Zenith on here as well.
I'm wondering if this is the angular one that just came out. Not too long.
Okay. So this is this is the new one.
Oh, I think that's nice.
Yeah, I wonder if I was thinking of I wonder whether it's an IWC, but the one that was it might be a Blaupat actually. The one that has the depth gauge built into it. I think it's like the 50 Fathoms X.
Yeah. Well, James, I'm not mad at you if you buy that watch. That watch looked good to me.
Oh yeah, here we go. I was going to put let me just find it. I was going to put this one on as a bit of a guilty pleasure. This is the 50 Fathoms X Fathoms, and it's actually got a depth gauge built into it. But I think somebody will know this better than me. But I think it has like a diaphragm inside the watch that reacts to the pressure. They haven't got a great video here, but yeah, this is like monstrously big. Oh yeah, $40,000. I wonder whether it doesn't actually go into it, but there's a whole system inside it that has a depth gauge in it, and I was going to include this on my list actually.
Oh, I wish you did, because I mean, I said I've never seen that, but that's like Blancpain meets Richard Mille. I didn't know they made such a colorful out there watch. I mean, that's a crazy watch.
Yeah, I wonder if there's actually of course, Watchbox Reviews has of course has made the has made a video on it. But yeah, it's got almost a let me just see if I can pull this picture up, see if this is a news article on it. Oh no, it's just taking me back to the same one. It's just asking to make an appointment, but it's yeah, there's almost, you'd have to look it up. It's got this almost diaphragm that changes on the pressure. It's quite innovative, actually.
Yeah. Oh, it sounds pretty cool. I mean, any of those watches that have the depth gauge, I wouldn't even know how they would do that. But you're right. There'd have to be some, moving component in there. So pretty neat.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, guys, thank you so much for joining. Patrick, thank you for joining me. And thanks, everyone, for supporting us in the comments with all of your great suggestions and comments. We really appreciate it. And we will see you all on Sunday for the Sunday Social. So thanks, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everybody.